getting one. I'm a rhino, I'm a hornet toad. Netherlands to Borneo. Planet Earth, we can't neglect it. Nature sexy. We need this place, so please respect it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wild and Unprotected. I'm your host, Ethan Lehman, and I'm here with a different guest than we normally have on the show. Hey Evie, how's it going?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me. Honored to be on the podcast.
So this episode is going to be a little different than it normally is. Normally our guests are tied specifically to a conservation organization, but Evie is actually a wildlife photographer. Since we're a conservation media-based organization, we wanted to tie media into our shows in some way, shape, or form, and this is kind of our first shot at doing that. So Evie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi guys. So like Ethan said, I'm a aspiring wildlife photographer. Future goal obviously is to become a full-time photographer. Just started 5 years ago when I moved to Colorado. Kind of hard not to pick up a camera when you move here. So I started off with landscape photography and just got into wildlife photography this year. So,
And what inspired you to get into photography?
I just coming to Colorado, going on my first hike, I was like, wow, this is gorgeous. I just want to take a picture of this. And I only had my phone. And I was like, oh, I just want to take another picture of this. And I was like, okay, maybe I should just invest in a camera. Luckily, my sister gifted me her camera. And so I had, this really old Nikon and just went with it. And, it worked really well. I can't complain. My first photos are with that camera. So, but now upgraded since then. So
I think it's probably a good point to insert this into the discussion. Are you team Nikon, Canon, or Sony?
Sony all the way. Well, I can't say Canon because, I haven't experienced Canon, so I don't want to count them out yet. You never know what's in the future. I could probably get one. But right now, Sony has been life-changing. And I think a lot of people are on that team as well. So
I can say I am as well. Definitely team Sony. So that's my go-to.
So yeah.
What's your daily shooter?
A7 IV. Just great with photos, great with video. Cannot complain. If I were to upgrade, it'd probably be the A9 Mark III. That thing is ridiculous. Like just the frames per second is just out of this world. So for future wildlife like photography, like as I grow, that would be the upgrade for sure.
Yeah, I think that burst mode is so incredibly important when shooting wildlife, so you actually don't miss a thing, and then you don't have to deal with a lot of motion blur.
Absolutely, and the pre-recording, so even before you start shooting, like I think that's just amazing. All you can need in the camera. So
yeah, Sony's advancement in AI as well for subject recognition for autofocus is top notch too, and I think that's why, at least for the time being, Sony is definitely the go-to for all wildscape work.
Absolutely. So Team Sony here.
Yep, I think that might play well into the later segment of the show.
Okay, good.
So what are some of your goals as a wildlife photographer now? As you said, kind of aspiring to be one. I would say you're well on your way there from what I've seen so far with your social media. So what are some of those goals?
So obviously the goal is to become a full-time photographer, right? Not having the 9 to 5 and just solely focusing on that. Like short-term goals, I was just thinking, like, for these questions, I was like, maybe, a short-term goal, like having my work printed or having, it published. I feel like that seems so small, but to me, I think it's a really big deal. So that would be like an honor to me to have somebody say, hey, I think that deserves to be published in a magazine, or that needs to be hung up in my home. So that's what I think. Like obviously long term, I would love to be a conservation photographer, getting into the nitty gritty, showing exactly what's going on. And I'm currently starting that in my backyard, so it'll be interesting future wise.
Yeah, currently right now most of your work is posted through Instagram, correct?
Yep, just Colorado based right now, or wherever I'm going to.
Speaking of wherever you're going to, didn't you just recently go on a trip?
I did. I just came back from Alaska a couple weeks ago. Just life-changing trip. You know, everybody says you have to visit Alaska at least once in your life, and it's absolutely true. And if you can visit more than once, you absolutely should. It's just another world. I think there's a different type of wilderness there. Like, yeah, in Colorado, you go to the mountains and it's great. You come back home at the end of the day. Like, no, you're surrounded by wilderness all the time. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
So where exactly did you go in Alaska?
So I took an inside passage cruise. So it made stops at Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, and Glacier Bay National Park. So obviously the highlight for me was Glacier Bay National Park, being a really big national park enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was the highlight of the trip, absolutely. Saw my favorite animal in the whole world, sea otter, for the first time in the wild. So it doesn't get better than that. I actually thought they were ducks because I was out there at sunrise with my telephoto lens, just like looking like a crazy person at sunrise, and there was just ducks out. And so I was like, oh, nothing's happening. And then I just look and I'm like, hey, let me check out this duck and see. And it's a sea otter. So I was just, on the verge of tears. I was like, yeah, it just happened like that. And then, yeah. So, and they were everywhere throughout the rest of the day. So it was pretty magical.
Did you get any amazing shots of them?
I got one good one. I'm telling you, the angle from the cruise was not working with my lens. You think you're closer than you actually are. And so mine was like zoomed in all the way at 600 millimeters. And I'm getting, that's when the A9 would come in very handy because I was getting very blurry shots and I got just one perfect in focus photo. So I'm going to cherish that one forever. But hopefully I'll get better ones next time.
Well, maybe that'll be the one that ends up getting published or hung up in someone's home or hung up in your home.
I'm going to print it out for sure.
So we were talking about kind of your main form of distribution right now is social media. And I think that that's kind of a hot topic right now in regards to conservation and conservation media as kind of being the go-to distribution form for people to get known, for people to see a lot of the work that's being done. I mean, that's how we primarily distribute our content. Let's talk a little bit about social media and what it's done for you and what you think it does for conservation.
Absolutely. I was thinking about just conservation as a whole, and I think photography, well, wildlife and landscape photography in general, is a conservation tool. So, like, those images that you take have the ability to tell a story, like spark emotion, and then therefore spread awareness. So, like, whenever somebody does take a photo, you're sharing your experience with other people and they want to experience it for themselves. And therefore, you have to, like, I feel like that instills a passion for conservation. Like, you need to protect these places if you want to experience them yourselves. So,
yeah, I agree. I also consider it a really important stepping stone.
absolutely.
People, they don't know what they don't know, and having a pathway to allow people to get to know what work is being done with conservation, what animals are being worked with, what daily life is like, is a really important stepping stone to pushing conservation as a whole forward. To me, it encourages that initial response, that initial engagement, that initial interest, and then that interest leads to, okay, what can I do? How can I get involved? Or more importantly, how can I go see that for myself with my own two eyes? And that's really where I think things start to get, uncovered, is when they see it for themselves. Because like the experience
Absolutely.
you had with the otters, others can have with other animals. I know a couple people in particular that sea turtles do that for them. Me
Yeah.
in particular, whale sharks do that for me. So when you get that first interaction, it's so powerful and it kind of changes the way you see things. And so social media, in my opinion, is the most important stepping stone, and it's why it's such an important part of our workflow at Wildscape. I wish I understood social media algorithms better, and I wish I had the consistency to work with them and post with them, but it
You
still
know,
is so important.
even if you have the consistency, the algorithm is just going to screw you in the end. So you just got to keep pushing and just keep putting content out there and just cross your fingers that it reaches the right people. So
That is
that's just all I
exactly
hope for.
why we've got a social media manager now, because
Yeah,
I can't do it. I get frustrated. I think I'm one of those people that is looking for instant results. Like I have the mental fortitude just to keep going with
right.
most any other thing in life, but when it comes to social media, it's such like an instant engagement piece, and you have that immediate serotonin hit, and then when you're trying to
Yeah.
run a page and grow a page, when it doesn't happen, you're like, what the hell? This
I
sucks.
think I'm with you on that. I think it's the I love like I love engaging with others in the community. Like that's the best part. Like receiving comments in your post, like, "Oh, this is interesting. Thanks for showing this. Like this is a different perspective. Like thank you for sharing that." Is the best part. But creating the content, posting it, making sure it's at the right time, and with trending audio and things like that, I think it takes away from the experience. But hopefully, in the long run, it's worth it to connect with an audience that matters. So.
Yeah, and you never know what'll happen through social media. You could end up on a
Yeah,
podcast. You could end up
that is
partnering
very
with an
true.
organization. You never
You
know.
never know. You never know. It's true. You just got to be wearing the right hat at the right time. Just pop up on the Explore thing. It just works like that.
um, just a disclaimer for everyone listening. The reason we're laughing so hard is I think that's a really good tease for the end of the show here. And we will definitely go into depth and explain that more. But back to kind of the social media piece of it,
Right.
especially from a photography point of view. How does that impact how you work? I know one of the more frustrating things for me when I like to go shoot and it goes to social media is I get so frustrated with compression. Like I take so much time and effort to learn because I learned so late. I didn't really pick up a camera until a couple years ago. Like I had solid fundamentals when it came to photo comp, but I had just never picked up a camera. Cameras were expensive. I didn't have adult money until, just recently where I could buy
Recently,
toys like
yeah.
that. And, I've gone down such a rabbit hole in really trying to get better at that and learn and put in the time. And the only way that it really goes out nowadays for, someone who's an amateur, doesn't get paid, for their work and just does it out of passion is through social media. And it just makes me so sad when you go through, forever editing in Lightroom and you spend so much time, pixel peeping everything. And then it goes on social media and it's just flat.
Flat, yeah, reached 100 people, and that is that. It is very frustrating, and I'll tell you, I would just love to post photos, right? Posting photos, I feel like was the reason why I made a social media account for my photography. But now it's creating video content, right? So now I'm starting to dabble in videography, which people enjoy. They love seeing actual footage of wildlife and how the species interact and things like that. So there is a benefit to that, but also it's just nice to, hey, I took this really nice picture and I just want to post it, and no one's going to see it, even though it's a really good shot, but, it doesn't matter because, Instagram doesn't like posts. But also I feel like orientation wise, I used to take all my photos landscape. Now I'm taking them portrait because it's more fitting for the format for Instagram.
Hmm.
So that's a little frustrating because I feel like you don't get the entire depth of the photo if you don't post it in landscape. So I still do, but like people don't, and like orientation wise for reels too, like nobody
Hmm.
does it in landscape as much as portrait. So
Hmm.
that's another thing that frustrates me just a bit, but
Yeah.
we're rolling with the punches. We're just pushing through.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good segue to talk about kind of the next point of discussion is technology and its involvement with that. I mean, if it wasn't for essentially phones being shaped the way they are, who knows? We might be shooting an entirely different way.
Right.
So it's interesting to see how impactful that is. What are your thoughts on technology and kind of how it's impacted conservation media or media in
So
general?
yeah, well, I feel like everybody has a high quality camera at this point, right? Everybody just pulls out their phone. It's great, especially the 15 Pros at this point, ridiculous cameras. So technically everybody can be a photographer, but I feel no matter what, there is always going to be a significant difference between a telephoto lens and a camera iPhone. Like you cannot capture those in-depth shots of wildlife with, a phone camera. I'm most of the time I'm zoomed in all the way just to get those really crisp shots of wildlife up close. And you can't do that zooming in with your iPhone. It's not as good quality. So like, I still think, you know, if you want to get into photography, I think investing in a camera and those sort of lenses will take you a long way. But I love that everybody does have the availability of a camera and a good camera because they're still posting photos, still posting videos, and great quality, good content too. So, and I feel like the more people who do that, that's conservation too, right? You're showcasing something, and yeah, you may not have like a professional camera, but you're still showing a piece that should be protected.
Yeah, I
Which I think is
agree.
great.
And I think there's a lot of tools, in modern day phones too that translate really well. Like the fact that you can have a grid up on your phone as you're taking a picture, I think is a really good starting point that people don't understand because you can teach the rule of
Rule
thirds
of
really
thirds.
easily. I mean, there's all
Yeah.
that stuff that is right in your pocket nowadays that allows you to grow into the next level of camera where you can get that depth. And you're 100% right. There is such a difference between what a professional camera can capture versus what a phone camera can capture. And I think it also comes down to things like digital zoom. I'm sorry, like that's just punching in on a sensor that is already so tiny.
Yes, I
And
agree.
you're never going to get the shot that you see on social media with your phone. I mean, maybe one day, who knows? I mean, at the rate that technology is advancing,
I'd be surprised.
yeah,
But
maybe
yeah,
one day. I mean, I hope not, because I really like the cameras
yes.
that I've
And
invested
please
in.
don't put photographers out of work. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know what the crazy thing is I don't think that will ever happen because,
it's
in
true.
my opinion, photography is art, and art is subjective, and it doesn't matter. Things like, phone cameras. This is going to be controversial and might upset people. Like AI, they're just tools, and it's
It's
up
true.
to the artist to be able to use it correctly. And I think there are always going to be creative ways for the artist to utilize, those tools. Like one of my pieces that I really, really, really want to get to one day is I want Wildscape to be an organization that can shoot content for Apple's Vision Pro headset. That immersive, crazy content. That's not something that
Yeah,
10 years ago would have ever been a thought, but we have the opportunity to do so. And,
right.
that's kind of the next frontier, is immersive content like that. AI is great. I think AI is going to be an absolute force, but it is never going to be able to solve the creative problems that are going to come up from trying to create new cutting edge content like that, because it operates
Right.
off of a model. It's trained. So it still takes a human. Just like, everyone can have the nicest phone in their pocket, it still takes someone, with that eye, and their
Absolutely.
art to be able to take that picture. So
And
that's kind of
nobody
my
takes
two
the
cents on
same.
that.
Yeah, no, and nobody takes the same picture twice, right? You are there, you're experiencing that, you're capturing that. Nobody else, unless there's like a dozen people with you, but you're the one that's capturing that. So like, I it's a big topic right now on social media, AI and things like that. Taking content and training the database or whatnot. It's really controversial. A lot of photographers are not happy about that. So
And understandably so, I get it.
yeah,
And, enjoying that, from an amateur perspective, I try to have an open mind and be understanding, that some people are fearful. And a lot of the comments that they're saying in their thought process are based in fear right now because they don't want to lose their livelihood. They don't want to lose their
right,
passion, but I personally wanted to take a step back. Running a media organization myself, like I wouldn't want our organization to go under, but taking that step back and understanding like it's a tool and it's still always up to the artist, because an organization has to choose to use that tool and they have to
right.
choose how to use it. It's not like some AI is just showing up to our doorstep and was like, here's videos of fishes. And you're like, okay, great. I'm not going to have a videography staff anymore. It's not
Right.
like that's the case. You still
Yeah.
need a creative lead to be able to find a way to use AI. And that's an important piece to the puzzle for people to understand that. Now, obviously, there's some things that are, nerve wracking. And I get that. I totally get that. I do. But at the end of the day, it's never going to be able to replace someone's creativity and someone's art because it's constantly evolving. Like
Absolutely.
AI is, pulling up to where, we're at right now. Well, since AI is trained off of what we've done, eventually we're going to pull back ahead. And,
Right.
there's going to be new jobs. There's going to be, industry segments. So that's my 2 cents on that. Technology is important, and I think it has, a really big piece in the future, especially in conservation, because you can mass produce content that, is difficult to get. Like, it's expensive as
Absolutely.
hell to
Hmm.
get out, into nature. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people understand that. Like, you can't. When we filmed the first episode of Shoreline Stories for Wildscape, that cost probably around 15 to 20 grand, and that was for 5 people for 5 days. And we were lucky that we didn't have to pay for a lot of things. It's expensive to get there. That's the
Absolutely.
problem. So
Yeah.
this
I mean,
AI is
that's why I'm
just.
currently doing it in my backyard. So I totally
Hmm.
understand.
It seems to be working
Yeah.
out though, because you're in a pretty damn good place to be doing it.
Yes. Colorado is paradise. I cannot complain. It's, actually, speaking of conservation, 20 minutes from me, there's the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Refuge, and it's literally conservation in 15,000 acres right next to you. You could literally see downtown Denver from there. It's actually, there's a photo of that I have. So
We'll display
it's
it on
just
screen.
crazy. Yes. And it's just crazy to have that piece of wildlife just existing right outside of downtown. So it is possible. There are people who care. It came from, like, it was a war manufacturing site turned into a sanctuary, and it's thriving. So I go there every chance I get. So,
That's awesome. Well, I think
yeah.
that place alone is another good transition point. You're just lobbing them up to me.
Welcome.
Let's talk about how places like that allow you to tell a story with pictures.
So, I mean, it's not hard to tell stories when you're capturing wildlife, like just their everyday life, right? I just happen to pull out my camera and I just happen to be there witnessing it. Sometimes it's up to me whether the message I want to convey, right? Like, do I just want to, show the beauty and, just the interactions between the wildlife, or am I highlighting the harsh reality, the juxtaposition of downtown Denver being right next to, this wildlife sanctuary? So it's like, I feel like it's not hard to come up with a story. I have an example. I was just filming prairie dogs, and they are just, it's spring. So the babies are out, they're running all over the place, the couples, and it's just like, there's just one moment where the mom prairie dog and the dad prairie dog are just showing each other some affection. They're just cuddling, and it's just like a beautiful raw moment. And I feel like I didn't really have to do much, but just record what they were doing. And I felt like that, like, invoked like the feeling of love and affection and just like caring. Meanwhile, prairie dogs are looked down upon in the city because they're considered pests and they take over areas and things like that. But like here in the sanctuary, they're beautiful animals and they just want to live and enjoy life and, make babies. So it's really, that's how I tell a story, I
Hmm.
guess. I think about what I want to convey, and sometimes it just happens naturally. So,
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the beauty of working, with nature is that sometimes you don't have to think it up. You just have to be there
yeah,
and take in the moment, and that's a really beautiful thing, where that not many other industries get to experience when it comes to
yeah.
storytelling.
I feel like definitely wildlife photography in general makes you slow down. It makes you spend time with these animals. It makes you appreciate the seasons. I go there multiple times each season, and just to see these animals just keep on pushing, and the baby, like the bisons just had red dogs, and life is just growing there. and just spending time with these animals, I feel like it's so rewarding. So wildlife photography in general just makes you slow down. It makes you want to capture these moments. Landscape photos, you're like, I got the shot. Like, let's go. We got to hike all the way back down to the car, wherever, like wildlife is like, no, you're in there and you're going to experience this and you want to experience it with the animal. So.
And now on to our favorite segment of the show here on Wild and Unprotected, the Wild Stories segment. For those of you that don't know, or for new listeners, this is the segment of the show where we let the stories go completely unfiltered. There's no red tape here. We let it all hang out and have some fun in this section. So, Evie, tell us a wild story or two.
All right, he really hyped this up here. I'm going to bring it down. So I would say my wild story was a trip to Grand Teton a couple years back. And if you've ever been to Grand Teton, it's just one of those places you'll always remember. It's as dramatic as it looks like. You won't ever find mountains like that anywhere else. Definitely one of my favorite national parks. So was there visiting for the first time. And I had my hopes up for a wildlife encounter, right? You're like, oh, it's Grand Teton. They have grizzlies, they have moose, elk are everywhere. They even have otters. And so I started a hike, which was at Cascade Canyon, one of their most scenic hikes you could do there. And I was walking along the trail, and I was with my husband, and we're walking on the trail, and I noticed, black mama bear just walking across the path right in front of the trail, and my husband didn't notice, so I had to be like, hey, you need to stop. He's like, oh, okay. And then we slowly started taking our steps back, right? And she was with her cub, and the mom could care less, right? Was just about on her way. The cub was rather interested in us and was just slowly moving towards us. So we're slowly moving back, and we're like, okay, you got to scurry along now. But the mom was on a mission, and he was being left behind, so took one last look at us, just bolted, kept going on about his way. And so we're like, wow, that was amazing. That was great. That was awesome. And we just kept going along the trail. And of course, we ran into her again on the trail. And, we're lucky the first time not to irritate her. You never know how mamas could act, especially with a cub. So we ran into her a second time, and the cub was very interested in us again. And I was like, man, we're just pushing our luck with this one. But, they just kept on their merry way. And the cub was just watching us, and we were just watching them, and just, hoping that was as much as the interaction we were going to get. But I still remember the details, and that was just such a great memory for me, because it's, just encounter them twice on the trail, and it was like we were going the same path, and it was just magical.
Yeah, I mean I would say that's pretty wild. I mean, it's not every day you get to cross paths with mama bear and her cub and things.
Yeah.
I don't want to say things will always go south, but most of the time in that specific situation, mama bears are on alert. You're a foreign entity. They don't know really what you are unless she's encountered a lot of humans before, which maybe being that close to a trail, she might not have the attitude that animal that didn't have that interaction level would. But I mean, that's still pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it's actually funny thing. Grizzlies now are actually, female grizzlies are living closer to roads now, because male grizzlies are terrified of people and cars and things like that. So mama grizzlies are staying closer to the roads to protect their babies. Yeah, so it's really interesting. It just came out recently, but that's a new study that now mama bears are just sticking by the roads and are often found there, because male grizzlies, which is the number one reason why cubs are killed. So they found out, hey, if I stay close to the road and closer to people, then I have less risk for my cub, and I'll have a better chance to survive.
I didn't even know that. That's so. Yeah. I mean, that's sad and cool all at the same time. I mean, I'm having mixed emotions right now, but that's definitely interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, they definitely evolved their way of raising their their cubs
Mm-hmm.
around us. So I think I am conflicted as well. So
Yeah. I have a bear story too, and I don't think it's anywhere near as enjoyable as yours. I grew up in the Panhandle, Florida, and there's a black bear population where I grew up in Fort Walton Beach. They're basically domesticated. It feels like they don't mind human interaction. They'll walk up into your front yard. They'll climb fences and go into your backyard. And I'll never forget. It was either in eighth grade or just going into high school. And there was a storm that passed through. Everyone who's lived in Florida at some point knows that from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day, you're probably going to have a thunderstorm at some point.
right.
So we just had a thunderstorm push through, and it had knocked our garbage can over. And of course, it's the one day we had a bear, close to the house. And this bear walked up into the driveway, opened the knocked over trash can, pushed the trash can back up, took a bag of Doritos that got thrown away, like just a full bag, not even like
Man,
it wasn't empty.
what
It
a
took a
waste.
I don't even know. I literally I remember the color of the bag. It was blue, so it was the Cool Ranch
Cool
Doritos. I don't
Ranch.
know why I still remember this. The only thought that I had was I don't eat Cool Ranch Doritos, so it might have been mine, and I just threw it away.
Oh
I do
my
not like that
gosh.
flavor. Just
Yeah.
regular nacho cheese Doritos for
Oh
me.
my gosh.
So the bear opened the bag, kind of like a human, and just started eating chips out of the bag,
Yeah.
and then just left. And
Yeah.
I watched the entire thing, and I was like, did I really just watch a bear eat a bag of Doritos?
I mean, I would too. I think it's pretty entertaining. Um, and yeah, at least that food went somewhere. So
That's true. I'm still like to this day, I still tell that story all the time because it's just such
yeah.
a weird story. Like I've never, like I honestly thought it was a bear or a human in a bear suit at one point because I was like, this just doesn't add up. Like at one point, the bear's going to stand up and it's just going to knock on my door and say, hey, can you let me in?
Yeah. Also, did you get this on video? What is it? Yeah, no. I think it's crazy to see how they adapted to just survive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they encounter that all the time. They're like, hey, we got to get in there and just get that food.
Yeah. Well, I guess that turned into the wild bear story segment. Yeah, so I think we can start closing out the show here now. So, Evie, do you want to talk a little bit about your future and what you want to do? We talked about your goals earlier. Let's talk
Absolutely.
about the future a little bit.
Yeah, so as I stated before, my goal is to be a conservation photographer. And I am a conservation photographer now because I am officially a part of the Wildscape team as director of photography. So, yes, hands all around. So thank you, Ethan. I'm very glad we connected. Very glad to be a part of the show, and now glad to be a part of the team, especially. All thanks to a reel on Instagram with a Florida State hat because go Noles. And yeah, just everything fell into place. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited, that we're able to announce that, and thank goodness for Florida State. Thank goodness for our time at Florida State, and that is the one time I think the algorithm has actually worked for me.
One
I've really
time.
been thinking about how Wildscape can begin to grow. I mean, we have 2 podcasts now. We have video content, that's on the back burner for right now, just because cost is crazy for those
Right.
kind of things, as we alluded to earlier. But I've been thinking for a while, how do we grow as an organization, and what are some things that I'm passionate about? What are things that I truly feel be impactful, for wildlife conservation as a whole? How do we grow? And photography was one of those pieces. I was like, what, I see a lot of talent here, and let's see what happens. I reached out, and it ended up working out. It's made for a great podcast episode, which I think that was kind of the start. But let's
Right.
talk a little bit about what the future actually looks like, some of what our plans are here as an organization, and what we want to do, and why you've been brought aboard.
So we have great partners, working out in the field, working in conservation, and I feel like showcasing them, their work, providing content for them, and showcasing that to our audience, I feel like is the main goal. Obviously, you know, doing our own conservation efforts, reaching out and, trying like, our stories that we want to do. Um, you know, I feel like those are the next steps to focus on. I like that thumbs up.
That happens every once in a while.
Does it?
Um, but yeah, that's definitely something that's on the plate for us. I know another piece that we had talked about is something that we want to develop here in the future, and that's a
Yes,
platform for wildlife photography, for people to
absolutely.
be able to have their stuff published,
Absolutely.
for lack of a better term, because having an audience of any size, technically can kind of make you a publication if you're putting it out there. So,
It's true.
you and I had talked about really growing that side of the organization and providing a home for people in conservation to be able to push their stuff out to an audience that they might not have access to, regardless of size. If it's one person, 200 people, 10,000 people, extra audience is extra audience. And we want to make sure that
Absolutely.
there's an opportunity there, from a photography perspective to be able to do that. And I'm really excited to kind of have you on board to be able to help lead that, because I think that's going to be one, really fun, because you never know, there could be the next Pete McKinnon, who's probably my favorite photographer right now, that
Mhm.
is, super inspired by conservation and wildlife, and that's what they want to dedicate their lives to. And by us creating this platform, they might get the jump start that they need to, go make an impact in the world. And if we have one person, who goes through our platform and our program and ends up blowing up and, does some good, then it's all worth it.
All
And I
worth it.
think that's,
Hmm.
kind of where the future, leads for that department. And, I really can't wait to see, you kind of as the director of it moving it forward.
Absolutely. Like we can't be everywhere, right? So there's photographers all over the country capturing moments that we have not seen. And I feel like having this platform, them being able to submit their work and show whoever the audience is a piece of their work, I feel like is just extremely rewarding for them and for us, and to just showcase like, hey, conservation is happening everywhere. Let's focus on this.
Yeah.
And having those photographers brought on board would be a great community in general. It's not only, just submitting your work and having it published. It's like, no, we're going to be in contact. We're going to build a community. Like this is more than just that. So
Yeah. And I think that's a good piece that I even forgot to hit on. You kind of touched on it lightly earlier. We're so lucky here at Wildscape to be connected to organizations, all over the world. We can go shoot, koala conservation out in Australia with our friends at IFAW. We can go to the Philippines and shoot manta conservation with our friends at Manta Trust. We can go to Costa Rica and shoot sloth conservation with our friends, down at the Toucan Rescue Ranch. And a little sneak peek for what's going to be coming here in the next couple of weeks, we can go to Africa and shoot rhinos with our friends at Helping Rhinos, which if if there are listeners that love rhinos out there, you're going to love an upcoming episode. It's going to be a fun one. So we're connected in so many places, and we can't be in all those places at once. So providing opportunity for photographers where that might be local for them, or that might be down the road, just like either you are in Colorado, is an important piece to what we're doing, because we can unlock doors that others might not be able to. And
absolutely.
that, for us to kind of be a key, I think is a great thing. We don't need the recognition. We need to continue to do the work. And this is an
Mhm.
opportunity, for us to do the work and give opportunities to others to make impact. And that's kind of the core at what I feel that we should do here in the future. And I feel like it's going to lead to some amazing content, some amazing storytelling, and hopefully drives funding, not only for us, because of course, we're not going to shy away from that. Everyone needs funding. As Terrence Lee said in the first episode of this season, conservation doesn't happen on an empty stomach. So maybe we get funding for other photographers that want to do this full time. Maybe we get funding for the organizations that they're taking pictures of. There's so much impact that we can have. So, and I'm really excited to be able to build out a platform to be able to do that and have you spearhead it.
Yes, I'm very excited. I think it's an honor, obviously, to join. Very glad we connected. Um, I'm very excited to see how it grows. Very excited to go on the journey
Yeah.
with everyone on the team.
Yeah, same. Well, I think this is a good point to wrap up this very unusual episode of Wild and Unprotected. And how can people get in contact with you and connect with you and start to follow, your wildlife photography journey?
Yes, well, now you could also go to wildscapesproductions.org, and on the About Us section, I am listed under there as Director of Photography. So if you ever want to email me, that's the place to go. And on Instagram, social media, Evie Explores. That's me.
And that is also linked on the Wildscape Productions website as well. So if you go there, it's a one-stop shop. You can find her Instagram. You can reach out to her via email and connect with Evie. And I'm so excited, that we have a new team member that's going to help us branch out into a new direction.
Very excited. I'm very excited to go on this conservation journey with you guys. Very excited to start. Well, I have started, but to fully immerse myself in conservation photography and do incredible work with you guys. It's great things are coming this way. So,
Well, this is going to be a blast. So thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Wild and Unprotected. We'll see you next time.